The United States has imposed sanctions on a senior Cuban official and a security force which answers to the Cuban Ministry of the Interior. That's over their response to anti-government protests earlier this month. The US State Department says the repression of the demonstrations was a human rights violation and has warned that more action could be taken. Well, Carmen Pelaez is a Cuban-American filmmaker and activist. She's a communications consultant to the current Biden administration's Cuba policy change team, and she worked with President Obama as well. She's on Gasparilla Island in Florida and joins us live now. Carmen, thank you so much for making the time for us. These sanctions on Cuban officials over what the US government says was repression of anti-government protests, what do you make of them?
Well, I think they're the first step in letting the Cuban people know that the regime will be held accountable by world governments. They were brutal in their response to peaceful protests, and they need to know that the world is watching.
What do those who've been protesting make of the sanctions?
Well, we haven't quite gotten word of how they feel about it, but my assumption is what they've been asking for all along, that their work is being seen. They are asking for freedom. They are asking for the freedom to protest and to hold their own regime accountable without being violently attacked by that regime. I think the more that we let the Cuban people know that we see the work that they're doing, that we hear that they're calling for freedom, for their human rights, the safer they will feel when holding that regime accountable for their own failures.
President Obama eased sanctions on Cuba. There was a bit of a thawing in relations there. President Trump reimposed the sanctions. When President Biden came into office, there was a slight anticipation, expectation, if you will, that the thawing may begin again. What do these sanctions say about the tone of future Cuban-US relations?
Well, the problem is that in that time, the Cuban regime also increased their repression of the people. So they also showed that they were acting in bad faith. I think right now, nobody knows what's next, but we're all looking towards the Cuban people to see what they want to do next, how they want to protest, and what difference they want to make for their own country. We're really following their lead, and I think that's the right thing to do at this moment, because a lot of people have opinions about Cuba, but they're living it. And we need to center them and center their voices and their actions.
You're in Florida. There's a big Cuban population there. How much pressure is that community exerting on President Biden, and how much is this driving his agenda?
President Biden is probably one of the most truly moral leaders we've ever had. He's a man that says what he means. I think he understands the Cuban diaspora. I think he understands their calls for accountability. But make no mistake, President Biden will always try and do the right thing. And I think that's what he's doing now. He's holding bad faith actors accountable. He's holding a failed state accountable. And even though, yes, people are calling for it, also people in Miami are calling for different things. You have many of us that are calling for peaceful humanitarian international intervention, and you have those that are calling violence for violence. And I think President Biden is doing the right thing by amplifying the message that the Cuban people are getting out through their cell phones, are getting out through videos, showing world leaders and world actors what is actually happening in Cuba, and trying to create that network to hold the regime's feet to the fire. If you want to lead your people, then you have to listen to them. And I think that he's responding more to the Cuban people than to people that may or may not vote for him.
Carmen Pelaez, filmmaker and activist, joining us from Gasparilla Island in Florida. Thank you very much for making the time for us.
Thank you.